are you, Bob?
Well, I woke up this morning, I remembered my name and where I was supposed to be, and I'm here.
I love it. Thank you so much for getting on our show. You know what's funny is did you now remind me? So I'm Mindy and
All right.
it's just me on the show and Jason's on, but he's recording. So it's just me talking to you.
Okay.
But
And where are you located?
I am in Chandler, Arizona. So,
Okay. All right.
yep, right outside of Phoenix. And 2 years ago today, so here's a coincidence. 2 years ago today, I went on the Waltland tour with you. Isn't that
Oh, excellent. All right.
So we'll talk about that if that's okay a little bit. I know you just finished your season for this year, right?
Yeah, we just had a more than a full bus. It was full enough that Ernie, my manager, he had to stand.
Oh, I love Ernie. He's a
Yeah,
good
right.
guy.
And then it was cold and wind and drizzly rain blowing through the tent, and it was we did a tour in January, so this is May, so we did the February tour yesterday or
Okay.
Sunday.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we'll
and
talk
it's
about
still it's still looking out the window here. Temperature is 59, and quite a good storm brewing here.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
supposed to rain over the Memorial Day weekend with a little more snow in the mountains.
Okay.
So so it's February here.
That's amazing. We've been to your house and did the barbecue with you. So I've got to meet you a few times.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'm not going to waste a lot of your time and just ask you some questions and introduce you if that's okay. And
Sure.
Okay, so I appreciate you for getting on. So I'm going to introduce you, and then I'll just, so what we're kind of going to do is go through just a little part about Disney, because I know I want to talk more about what you're doing after Disney and then today, and just kind of fill our guests in on what you did at Disneyland, if that's okay.
All right.
All right. So we're going to get started. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Grand Circle Tour podcast. We are here with none other than Robert Henry Gurr, also known to many of our Disney community as Bob Gurr, who was born October 25th in 1931. Is that right, Bob? How are you?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That's all correct.
Good. So you live in Los Angeles, is that right?
Tonga.
Okay. And how long have you lived there?
27 years.
27 years. That's amazing. Now, did you live there during Disneyland days, or were you somewhere else at that time?
No, I moved here in 1992.
Oh, okay. Good. So Bob is an American attraction ride designer and a Disney legend Imagineer. He's most famous for his work with Walt Disney's Disneyland Park, where he designed Disneyland attractions such as Autopia, Haunted Mansion. He designed the Disneyland monorail, the submarine voyage, and none other than the Matterhorn bobsleds. So Bob, tell me a little bit about your time with Disney. When you designed all of the above, did you ever feel overwhelmed creating so many designs all at once to prepare for that opening day at Disneyland?
Well, based exactly on what your question said, we were not overwhelmed designing a whole bunch of projects for opening day because I worked primarily on the Autopia car. So I worked on one project.
Okay, so on opening day, you're going to the park on that opening day, how was it seeing your Autopia attraction come to fruition?
Well, naturally, the park was a whole new idea. And of course, it was a madhouse day because Walt's trying to open a park. And there's a television program, 90 minutes of black and white TV and great big heavy cameras that you can't carry around. So it was a rather chaotic and very, very hot day. But we all had assignments. What we had to do, and my particular assignment was to take 9 of the Autopia cars off the attraction, drive them over to just north of the Opera House and be staged for our segment of the parade, Then after that, return them back to the ride.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So, is there a form of transportation that you designed that didn't make its debut into the park?
Uh, Walt never had us design anything or even start work on anything unless it was going to be successful.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to me. I didn't know if there was something that you had worked on or so everything that was built, he just said, this is what I wanted, and you went to work on it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's really interesting. And what memory, so if we're still talking Disney, Bob, what memory do you cherish most working so closely with Walt Disney?
All of 12 years was his cherished memories.
I love it. So is there something like, did you go anywhere with him that you remember that just sticks out in your mind?
All of it was absolutely fascinating and industry and interesting. At the same time, totally regular, normal, everyday work over a 12-year period.
Okay, I love it. And you have a window on Main Street, is that correct?
Yes.
And how did it feel when you got that?
Well, anybody who was at Disneyland in the early days, there is a tradition that the company would make a window on Main Street because, you know, it's an old town, it's a business town, and of course, usually businesses are on the upper floor. So that was kind of a tradition that Walt started that, well, we'll just put some fake businesses and with some real names on it to decorate the building. So that was just a standard thing that we would do, and periodically, maybe every year or so, an idea would come up. Well, we'll just put somebody's name on the window. So that's certainly one of the honors.
And you have your own little window at home? Did you get a little version of it?
Yes, the way they do the window ceremony, they make a half-size version that they give you, and then you can take it home and hang it up wherever you like in your home.
I love that. That's so fun. Thank you so much. And I cherish you from the bottom of my heart from Disney and all our Disney, lovers and our community. And you've had such an impact on not only my life, but so many people that have visited the Disney parks and around the world. But moving past Disney, many people don't know what you have designed outside of that. So I wanted to just take some time and talk about some things that you had your hand in, such as the Universal Studios King Kong experience. That is incredible to me. I got to see it when the first time I saw that, I was 13 years old. And the process. So can you tell us a little bit about the process in designing such a large animatronic?
Well, first off, I've never used a process. A process implies that you've been trained to do what you're doing, and you start from A and you go to Z, and if you're successful, you have something.
Okay.
My experience is that projects large and small, if you start out with a process, you probably are going to miss some much better ways to do things. So that by the time you're pretty far through a project or just about done, then if you look back, you can say, oh, that's how we did it. Well, I guess that must have been the process. It's completely backwards. Most people assume that there is a process by which successful things are done, but I've never found that to be true at all. You look at a project and you very quickly get a kind of a broad brush view of all the things that it's going to entail, and then you begin to identify which are the serious ones that you'd be in trouble with if you didn't get it figured out correctly. And that way you can figure out which things need to go first, which things can be left as little details later. You can also figure out, well, you might only make documents of some of it, and then leave another part of it. You'll just arm wave it as you go. That way, you're able to completely flex with all of the elements of any kind of a project. I find that was much faster, much more natural, and far more productive.
Oh, I love it. So was this animatronic, how does it work? How was the workings of it in the inside? How did it work? Because it was so big.
Well, it weighed right around 14,000 pounds, was 30 feet tall, had 660 pounds of gorilla fur on the body structure. It was basically a steel-framed mechanical apparatus that had a support frame that went up about 15 or 16 feet in the air, and from which was connected a body structure that had upper movable body parts, arms, and fully articulated head. But it also had legs that extended all the way down near the floor that had great big counterweights on it, so that the figure was actually supported at its hips with a center of gravity below the pivot point, which meant if any of the power equipment that moved it lost its power, it would simply bob up to a point of equilibrium. Won't tip over, do anything that would hurt anything. You do things like that when you have a great big heavy machine. You don't try to power it into place. You have it where it's literally balanced and hanging from upper inner structure, and then you just move it, right and left, to and fro, and with all the other motions in it. It's much easier to do it that way.
Wow. So from what I have read, that this animatronic was actually pretty simple as far as the mechanics go to it then, just from what I've read. Is that correct?
Yes, it was simple enough that we could operate it with compressed air rather than hydraulics, although in later years, Universal wanted to drive it in a little bit different manner, and they did add some hydraulic power to it.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid, and I had gone back to Universal several times, but the first time I was floored, and to come later and know that you had built that it's just comes full circles. And another one that I found interesting, and I know it's in your book, and we'll talk about that, but the other magnificent design was right outside of Treasure Island Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, and that's the pirate ship. So how was designing such a large ship and water feature attraction outside in such a tight spot, was that harder to do, or like figuring out the details to put in that little spot?
No, well, actually, the area was a pretty good sized. Let's say with the area between the sidewalk and the entry to the building.
Oh, okay.
I would never call that job a hard job. It was, well, to me anyway, it's a routine job because virtually everything somebody asked me to do had never been done before, so there's no point researching anything. So you just sit down and try to figure out what are all the best possible ways to do it. So you might have 4 or 5 different ways to do something. So you're never challenged by the idea of, oh, how are we ever going to do this? Well, actually, there's quite a few ways you could do a project like that. It turned out throughout the entire project, it was a little over a year and a half, start to finish. We didn't have any unusual situations. It was just a case of just working towards getting all the things figured out, designed, built, put together, tested, and in the typical routine manner. But for an onlooker looking at it, they'd say, how in the world did they do that? But if you were there and I walked you through everything, after about 10 minutes, you could say, oh, I see. It's just some of this and some of that, and it all works.
You're so right, Bob. I remember seeing that. It's not there anymore, correct? I haven't seen it in a long time, but I know I saw it when I was about 15 years old. My family went to Las Vegas, and I remember seeing that show and just being blown away. And was it different trying to create something and design it when it was so hot outside in Las Vegas? Did the elements have anything to do with the like it getting hot or breaking down at all?
No, because I designed it in my house with my old Macintosh in an air-conditioned house. So I was completely comfortable designing and engineering all that. And we had two factories building the parts for the attraction. One was in Las Vegas, and another one was up in Utah, where they built the what would be basically the wheeled chassis for the boat, because the boat was not a boat; it was just a show action apparatus that was mounted to a rolling chassis. The basic structure of the boat was made in Las Vegas, of course, and then the wheel chassis came from Utah. So obviously, I'm not there every day in the heat, in the desert. I'm there about every other week for a day.
Okay. I appreciated that so much as a kid, and being able to watch it sink. It was so mesmerizing to me. So as far as moving past that, is there any work that you've done that maybe most people don't know that you've designed?
Well, that's kind of a hard question to ask, because I did 100 projects for Disney, and I did 150 projects for everybody else.
So what's your favorite thing you've ever designed?
Oh, the fire engine for Disneyland.
Is it? Do you get to drive it still, or is that you just love seeing it?
No, I've never driven it at Disneyland. Only the drivers drive it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had gotten the chance to be able to drive your fire truck design.
No,
So,
if you're not a certified cast member, fire engine driver, they certainly would not allow you to do that.
oh, okay. I learned something every day. Thank you so much. So let's talk about a while ago, you wrote a book called Design Just for Fun. And there were two editions. There was a red and a blue, and there was only 1,000 copies that were printed. And it's really hard to find these days, but it talks about kind of what we just talked about with Disney and then Universal and Las Vegas. But let's talk about, if that's okay, your book that you're coming out with, right? You just wrote another book?
Yes, the result of this book results in doing some writing on and off for the past 4 years. That based on the first book, and of course blogs and other kinds of information, YouTube and everything. Everybody always asks me. They say, "Well, you tell us about the jobs you do, and you tell us how you did it, but you never tell us about all the other stuff you do." Or they'll ask specific question about certain projects, like especially if a project didn't work, they want to know, well, why didn't it work? So it's been a collection of questions over the years. So I gradually put it all together in a book a few months ago. And so it's kind of a rambling book. It starts out with a little chapter called Origins, which is sort of explains our family background. And I do that primarily for my family in the future, because my grandmother kept a handwritten journal from 1899 to 1953. And she also was in the Daughters of American Revolution. She was a DAR member. And she spent a lifetime researching the Collins family name. That was our family name, back to England in 1635. And she's got it all documented, complete, how many children everybody had, what all their names were. So I thought, well, people say, "Bob, how did you figure this stuff out?" Well, I can't figure out how to answer it, because I just do what I do. So in the course of putting the book together and trying to study my family background, I had a better idea of why do I do what I do, because I can see the type of DNA that I inherited, because it comes from several generations back, that of people that were they were pretty strong achievers, and I didn't know that. So now I can better explain the origins of a Bob Gurr, which then can help explain, well, why did things get designed the way they were? But the book immediately goes into all kinds of events and stories to do with obviously Disney, obviously, and a lot of other companies. We get into quite a bit of aviation history, because Walt started his own aviation company, and just a year ago, the aviation division asked me to come down and explain their history to them because that part of the company grew so fast, nobody ever wrote down how they started. In fact, it was very peculiar that when they phoned me up, they said, we can't find anybody in the employment of the Walt Disney Company who has any idea how the aircraft group started. But people say, you were there. And I said, yes, I was there. I was the first pilot we had. He and I shared an office. And a lot of times I'd be flying as the co-pilot in the first airplane. So these are the kind of stories that are not really well known, but this was a good chance for this book to start explaining some of that. And then, of course, everybody knows I travel like mad. I've been on 43 sea cruises. I've visited 56 countries, some of them several times, and I'm just fascinated by learning about people and civilizations and how things work in other places. So we talk about that. Also, some people that don't know that I was a glider pilot for 50 years. That was my passion from the time I was a little kid. Then, of course, we talk about some projects that didn't work well as a sort of a business, kind of like business history of something that didn't work. You'd better know about why things don't work so that your job that you're going to do will have a better chance of working. A little obscure project at Disney, as some people have never heard of it, and some people know about it and they laugh, was called the Night Magic Parade on Disneyland. A lot of people wondered, they put all that work into it and it only ran 2 months. What happened? Well, I explained it. Why did it happen and why did it only go 2 months? There's another one. There's some things like in Walt Disney World. The tram tractors that pull the parking lot trams, the tractors, I designed them, and they're the ugliest thing I think I ever drew up. So I answer the question, why are they so ugly? And, of course, there's another one that involves Universal Studios Florida. They when they opened in 91, they had a fantastic show. It was called Jaws, and it opened and closed in 2 weeks. Well, I was there from the beginning of that job, and I can explain to everybody exactly what went wrong all the way through that project, so that you spent the time, you spent the money, and it only worked for 2 weeks and had to shut it down and do it over. It's those kind of stories that I like to share with people.
I love it so much. So what is your book called, and where can we find it, Bob?
It's called Bob Gurr, Legendary Imagineer, Life and Times, Disney and Beyond. So it looks at a big variety of things. I'd call it a book of, it doesn't really have chapters. It just has a bunch of stories that just kind of ramble on because some of the times kind of mix up, coming and going. But there's a lot of stuff that some of my philosophy of why do I do what I do and why did it work might be lessons for young folks when they want to be an Imagineer. What are the characteristics that good designers need? And of course, we all learned that from Walt. So there's a lot of things about Walt that I was able to share, and the philosophies of how you do business, how you do design. Quite a bit of information there that has never really been talked about on either of the blogs, and certainly was not in the first book.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. The book will become available on next Monday, May 27th. It'll be on Amazon, $21.95, and it's 8.5 by 11. It's soft bound, about a half-inch thick, and 184 pages, and it's a pretty good size print. I made the print to be 16-point Century School book, which is a type of font that has been proven to be so easy for kids, young folks, and older folks who the vision isn't so good. It makes it easy to read. So the font is not what we call a contemporary fancy design thing, but it's eminently practical to read. The other thing about the book compared to a hardbound book is when you have a book in your hands and it's a softbound, people say, well, if softbound's not important. But guess what? Have you ever tried to lay in bed at night and read a hardbound book? They're pretty heavy and they're hard, and you can't open them, and you're going to crack the spine if you open them too much. But a softbound book is as easy as pie to read. I'm also going to offer it as an e-reader, so that you can buy that for, much less price, of course. And also, a lot of Disney people like to collect books, keep them in their library. And they like to read them, but they don't like to get the fingerprints and wrinkles on them. So what I do is, for an extra $2.99, you can order an e-reader that'll even fit your smartphone. Now you can read my book a little bit at a time over a period of weeks or months on your phone, and then your pristine copy sits on your shelf with all your other Disney books, and it won't have any wrinkles in it.
Wow, that is fantastic. So that is amazing. I cannot wait to get my hands on this book. So is it a limited edition like your last one, or how many books are you releasing of it?
I do it with Amazon's KDP, that's Kindle Direct Publishing. It's an application in the cloud, and there's no humans that you talk to. You just use their templates, you follow their instructions, and it's your responsibility to get 100% of your manuscript and 100% of your cover exactly the way it's going to be, because nobody else is going to see it, only the computer. And that way, it's the easiest, fastest way anybody can publish a book. There's nothing to it, really. The way Amazon sets it up with their KDP publishing application. Basically, you can print the book anytime you want in any printing house anywhere in the world. That's the way Amazon works. Let's say I already ordered 400 books, because the ones that I start doing book selling, and of course I ordered 100 and had it shipped directly to the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose for their first book signing, which was last week. So the book, as people order the book, it's always kept in stock, because as the orders come in, they periodically will print them. And the books that I've ordered, I find them, some of them are printed in San Bernardino, California. Some were printed in Delaware. Some were printed in South Carolina. And that's because Amazon has printing plants all over the world, and they figure out which place is the quickest, easiest, cheapest to get it to the buyers.
Wow.
That's a long-winded answer for saying it's not released in a quantity, and it will be available forever.
I love that. Some of us didn't get because your book before, the one designed just for fun, that was such a limited edition that it's hard to get your hands on that specific book. And I know they're very pricey you can find them on eBay every now and again, and they're obviously hard to get your hands on. And I know you had a reason for doing a limited edition. Is that correct on that book?
Well, certainly, yes. I've been watching how books get published, let's say in the Disney domain, and I notice Disney, people interested in Walt Disney, they love to have a beautiful book, and they love to collect it, and they consider it very important that they collect for their own personal library. And every time a book might be published, and then a publisher would say, well, this is our one and only book, and people buy them all, by the thousands, and then about 5 years later, that same publisher, it might even be Disney, said, oh, well, we have a few more pages to add, and we'll do an update. Well, here's what happens. You have somebody bought a book. Let's say somebody buys a $20 book, and pretty soon it's worth $100. And that, because it's, was promised that was going to be the only edition. And then the minute the update comes along, boom, the book goes right back down to $20 again. And a lot of people are irritated by that. So many, many years ago, as I'd go out talking to Disney clubs, and we talk about that situation, and I said, well, my book will be printed one time only, and I'll warn you up front, one time only, and I guarantee 100% it will never have a reprint. And they all applaud. So that told me that people that like to collect Disney books, they are very sincere and they have high expectations on a book. So that set up the situation that everybody that didn't listen to me when I said buy it now, they find out too late, and then I get these people by the hundreds, it seems. Oh, Bob, where can I get your book? I just didn't buy it in time. I said, well, I warned you, because this really is a one-time book. So now the people that bought, a few people bought 2 or 3 because I was the publisher. I had them printed in Hong Kong. I distributed the books here from my house, about 30 books a day. So I know who bought how many. So I knew that some people are going to keep one to read and then slowly put the other ones out on the market, knowing that it will grow because of its exclusivity. And sure enough, I saw them go for $200 or $300. Pretty soon they went for $600. And the latest batch I've seen, people ask, I don't think anybody buys it, they ask as much as $2,300 for a pristine version. So I thought, well, okay, I won't do that again. This time the book will be a cheap, floppy, easy to read, and it's available for anybody, anytime, forever. So that way, everybody can afford it.
I love that. You're right, because I did see one for $1,400 on eBay and $1,200 for a brand new of that book. But so this coming book that you're releasing, nobody has to rush and buy 12 of them, or we can just get that book and have it in our house.
Oh, yeah, you can get it anytime because Amazon will stock it various places around the world, based upon where their different economical printing plants that they have. So that way their ship time is pretty quick and economical to them. Stop thinking that Amazon is such a big company and they do stuff at such a fantastically attractive prices, and stop and think, that made Jeff Bezos the richest man in the world. So they're doing something right.
It's a great company. I'm a big Amazon fan, and their customer service is so stellar. I love it.
Yep.
I appreciate you, and I have one more question, Bob. So thank you for taking the time to tell us about your book and about your Design Just for Fun book. But what's your favorite thing to do? And I've had listeners ask me this in your spare time while you're not designing or writing books or flying around.
Well, buy the book. I explain what I do.
Oh, good.
But to answer your question, every morning, the first 3 to 4 hours of every day is answering fan mail on email, which people always got something with history, or I have to dig through my archives and dig it out to give them their answer. Then I follow a number of industries and columns every day to do with automotive industry, aircraft, airline history, and all the changes of civilization. I love international politics. I stay on top of all of the situations like Brexit, the rise of populism in countries. I love history of civilization so we can understand what's going on today. And then by that time it's lunchtime, so I got to do some housework or something or stay up with stuff. And then in the evenings, I don't watch live television anymore. It just became not worth watching. So all the television I watch, I record very carefully, things like National Geographic, Earth Sciences, history, nature. So television to me is just utterly fantastic. It's all beautiful. Never watched live, no politics, no commentators. And then much of the time I fly airplanes at night on my aircraft simulator. I have an X-plane simulator. And I fly about a variety of about maybe 12 different airplanes. The one I like the best is a Boeing 737 with Southwest Airlines paint on it. And these simulator days, these are so absolutely, totally realistic. And I have 20,000 airports around the world. So I love flying my plane on a great big 27-inch screen and enjoy the scenery all over the world as I fly. Most people don't believe somebody who's 87 would do that, but I do it.
I love it so much. Do you still fly your glider plane?
Oh no, I sold the glider 7 years ago. I flew it. I flew for 50 years, and I decided at the end of 50 years that I should take my own car keys away, and before somebody takes them away from me. And I never damaged anything, never hit a thing. So I thought 50 perfect years, I'll just stop right there and enjoy it. And in the meantime, like I say, I replace that with flying a bigger variety of aircraft. I've been doing it with these modern simulators.
Oh, wow. I love it. So thank you so much, Bob. Is there anything else you want to tell us about you that you want to share with us? And again, I appreciate your time.
Well, the main thing is you develop an internal philosophy of gradually getting rid of all anger. It takes a long time. You got to get rid of all the anger, and once you do that, then your stress levels come way down, and then your physical health comes way up, and then you pay attention to what you're eating, understand the use of foods, and eventually you get to a spot where you don't get excited or angry at anything anymore, and you have the smoothest days every day. And that's why I have a slogan, which is in the book. I stole it from Malcolm Forbes, and it's a simple motto: while alive, live. It's only 3 words and 1 comma. But the heart of it all is you must scrape all the negative stuff away from you. And people they say, Bob, give me an example. I said, well, first off, I'm not going to be a crabby old man when I grow up, and I certainly do not wish to speak to any crabby old men anywhere in the world today. So when they get a negative conversation, I just politely say thank you, and I walk off to a more pleasant place.
That is great advice from an 87-year-old guy who's done so much in this world. Thank you so much for getting on our podcast today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Okay, and you have a great day, Bob. I appreciate you.
All righty. Thank you much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you would like to keep the adventure going after the show, be sure to like our Facebook friends page, Grand Circle Tour Magical Ticket Holders. While on Facebook, like our group page, Grand Circle Tour. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Grand Circle Tour Podcast, as well as Instagram, GCT Podcast, and our YouTube channel, Grand Circle Tour. If you would like to send us a message, you can email us at gctpodcast@gmail.com. T-shirts and other fun merchandise can be found at tpublic.com. Simply search Grand Circle Tour Podcast. If you enjoyed your adventure, leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Only one rule: make it good. Thank you for riding with us, and welcome home.